Guys, weird start, but I was sitting in my toilet just debating with myself because I just seem to do that a
Yeah.
lot. But
Peeling back the curtain into James's personal life.
you know, I had my iPad out and I was just watching football because if I'm doing stuff, I'm always on my iPad or like on my phone when it comes to sports. And then Mount Rushmore just came into my head, and I hear a lot of Americans. I do watch a lot of the ESPN stuff, and they always have their sports Mount Rushmore. It's, oh, who's the best quarterback? Oh, who's the best athlete of all time? You know, all that, like all that sort of stuff there. And I get it. It is an American thing, but I said, you know what? Jack, let's do a football Mount Rushmore. So a Mount Rushmore is basically who is the greatest of something, and there's always four. So if you know that there's actual the Mount Rushmore in America, there's just four heads of all four presidents. I don't care about that, but it's usually the
Right.
four best at something or the most impactful at something. Now, me and Jack are going to say our football Mount Rushmore. Now, this is so many incredible players, and it's not disrespect. We're just gonna pick our four that we consider to have the biggest impact and possibly be the best ever at the sport of football. Now, Jack, do you want to go first?
I'm happy to go first. I'll do my little rationale explanation here. So two names which are going to be on there, which I assume will also be on yours, but I'll have you bite your tongue for a sec. I got Messi and Ronaldo both on there. Again, I'm covering myself over to just one era, but these are the two greatest players the sport's ever seen. I don't want to hear it. I don't need some old head who's watched somebody play in the '60s try and tell me that there's any better footballers than Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. Honestly, football develops, things change. These are the two best. I don't want to hear anything else. Um, those two were in both of my lists for my rationale because in my head I went, is this the four best players ever? Or is it something else? And I landed on the fact that it's something else. Now, if this was the four best players ever, my Mount Rushmore for me, my top four players of all time, I would have Ronaldo, I would have Messi, I would have Zinedine Zidane, and I would have Franz Beckenbauer. Those would be my four, right? Those are my four best players ever, one through four. But the Mount Rushmore, there's a certain level of what you give to the sport, right? There's a certain level of like what you represent, what you mean, not necessarily just your own personal and individual talent. So I still have Messi and Ronaldo. My two other names, though, James, I've got Pele and I've got Johan Cruyff. Those are my four Mount Rushmore guys. Now, I think I've made fun a little bit of Pele with you over the years with some of the leagues that he's played in, some of these stats that are a bit ropey and all this stuff, but Pele is such an iconic presence in the history of football, regardless of your opinions on what he was able to achieve in whatever league he played in, whether he tested himself, all that kind of nonsense stuff. If you just put aside his actual ability as a footballer, the name Pele, there's such a historical there's a real kind of swell of emotion in a footballing sense when you hear that name. That is kind of like the old school classic name, right? When it comes to football. Now, I know you have Maradona there, but to me, in the Pele Maradona debate or conversation, Pele is the outstanding historical name within football. And then Johan Cruyff. Modern football is not what modern football is today without Johan Cruyff and what he's been able to achieve. His family tree in terms of the players he played with and what they went on to do, the teams he coached, the coaches he taught and trained and developed and taught how to be better, and now what they've gone on to achieve with Barcelona, with Ajax, with all this kind of stuff. To me, there's no bigger single person who's had an impact on the sport as a whole, whether playing, managing, philosophy, player development, all this kind of stuff, than Johan Cruyff. Johan Cruyff, I'm sure sneaks into my top 10 players of all time, or maybe my top 20 players of all time, sure. But his ability and impact and legacy is the word that I've been trying to think of for the past 5 minutes. Legacy for Johan Cruyff is why he makes that list. But James, for me, like I say, my four best players of all time, Ronaldo, Messi, Franz Beckenbauer and Zinedine Zidane. But my Mount Rushmore, based on kind of the criteria that you've mentioned, I'm going to go Messi, I'm going to go Ronaldo, I'm going to go Johan Cruyff, and I'm going to go Pele.
Interesting, Jack. Messi, Ronaldo. I think
I was
They are new.
just sorry to. I know you've literally said two words, and I'm already interrupting you. I wondered if you'd try and pick one of them and then pick another era because you've only got four spots, right? That's the whole problem.
Jack, I like to look at this from this point of view. If I open the book of football and I had to tell someone, can you explain football to me? And like you only have four people to name. These are the
Right.
four people I would name. Yes, Cruyff is the most legendary figure, and the way he changed the game is huge, huge. And we know about that. But again, there's also people behind that like affected that too. So that's why I'm going to leave him out, because Cruyff is probably fifth in this argument for the
Right.
overall impact.
Right.
But these four players, and newly are Messi and Ronaldo, and what they've done to football, in my eyes, Jack, they broke football. They've made football a video game where scoring
Yes.
scoring 25, 30 goals isn't cool anymore. We need 40, 50, 60, 70s. You know, we need hat tricks every single week. You know, you look at the Champions League record before Ronaldo and Messi started, like, not it was 70, it was 73 by Raul. Ronaldo's on 120. He smashed it. The Real Madrid record, smashed it. Messi, the La Liga. No one will ever touch the La Liga record. No one will ever become Barcelona's all-time leading goal scorer. Ronaldo scored the most goals in the history of football. Messi, most assists in, like, since he's come in. Like, it's crazy what these two have done. And in this last decade, I'm grateful to say I've watched these two play football. As much as they get slander.
In kind of the prime of our lives of being able to watch football, right, as well. Like we don't have kids, like not married and all this kind of stuff. We have freedom to be able to watch these guys play. That's crazy.
And I'm gonna sit there in a few years' time and with grandkids and go, guys, let me tell you about Messi and Ronaldo and how great these two were.
Yeah.
But I gotta look at it I gotta take it back too from my other two. You can't mention football without mentioning Pele, Jack.
No,
All some of the greatest sayings in football have come from Pele, the beautiful game, Joga Bonito, all that sort of stuff. People who don't even watch football, you just mention the word Pele, they know what it is. It's just like, to me, wrestling. You mention the name Hulk Hogan. You know who that. You know what that represents. And Pele's represent everything in football. The bicycle kick, the skills, the majority of skills invented. Pele have done it. The World Cup, he made all of that. People talk about the way his career panned out. Pele was so big, he retired early and started doing all these exhibitions because people wanted to see this guy play football.
You know what? You know what he kind of reminds me of, mate? He kind of reminds me of Beckham a little bit. You know what I mean? Not, and that's a ridiculous comparison to make, but I mean that from a standpoint of like Bex was a great player, but Bex kind of transcended football, right? He became this like superstar for the UK and for England, right? And his play would never like justify the credit he was getting, but it's because of his lifestyle and who he was that he transcended it. And Pele, I think, did the same thing.
And listen, you're totally right there. I think when Pele, hope it will happen, when Pele does it's time, we're gonna see a massive football will mourn, because the guy is special to football. Like, he's, in my opinion, he's the most important name in the history of football. You know, Messi and Ronaldo, like what they've done right now, but Pele is the biggest name football's ever created.
Right.
And then his arch rival, Maradona.
You gonna throw him in there? I thought you would.
This Brazil-Argentina rivalry isn't nothing without both of them together. When FIFA done the greatest player in the 2000s, they're racking it from 1995, 1950 to the 2000s. The two were Pele and Maradona. When I talk about football, we talk about how great Messi was. Messi is literally a carbon copy of what Diego Maradona is. Right. A left-footed genius who just does things that, Jack, like, he did things that you were thinking, what? You know, like the most iconic performance of all time. The two most iconic goals, like performance, came from Maradona. The most iconic World Cup performance came from him. We all know the scandals, the drugs, all that sort of stuff. He became a football player. He showed everybody, like, this is who we are. We're crazy, but we're also damn well talented. Right. And he got away with murder. He did so many incredible things, winning like winning the league with Napoli. When I think of football, yeah, and there's so many great names. I love Ronaldo. I love R9, Zidane.
Right.
Pele, Maradona, Messi, and Ronaldo, to me, will be my Mount Rushmore. And will anybody ever come close to them? I'll be shocked. But those two, when I think of football, if I had to explain football to them, those are my four.
It's kind of a bit of an ongoing joke, isn't it? I think there's a certain level of like there's 10 or 20 top four people, whereas actually it's like no, there's four top four people. No, there's like 20 top four people. I honestly think you could make the case or make the argument. I still feel very strongly about my Johan Cruyff take, but again, James, you mentioned Cruyff would be fifth for you. Hey, Maradona's probably fifth or sixth for me. You know what I mean? So again, I like where you're coming from, and again, it's impossible to disagree. Honourable mentions. I think I already brought up a couple of names. I think Franz Beckenbauer is just amazing. Changed the game and was just unbelievably talented. Zidane as well changed the game, unbelievably talented in his management career. What he's gone on to achieve, I'd still love to see him have success at another club. Maybe see some legacy from a coaching standpoint as well. But obviously, the talent is undeniable there as well.
Guys, this has been actually a fun video. I always love looking back and appreciating greatness, and to talk about modern day greatness with the old school greatness of Cruyff, Maradona, Pele is to me is beautiful. And I've really enjoyed this video. You've heard Jack's four: Messi, Ronaldo, Pele, Johan Cruyff. Mine is Maradona, Pele, Messi, and Ronaldo. Guys, let me know your football Mount Rushmore, and if this gets the likes and the views that we want to, we might do one for the coaches, guys. So comment down below, guys. Let us know your four for the Mount Rushmore. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time.